At 7:42 on a wind-stripped morning over the Solomon Islands in late 1943, First Lieutenant Evan Mercer of the U.S. Army Air Forces banked his P-38 Lightning toward a column of black smoke clawing upward from the jungle canopy. His squadron, the 339th Fighter Squadron, 347 Fighter Group, had been tasked with intercepting a Japanese strike force retreating toward Bougainville. But now Mercer was alone, cut off after chasing a lone Ki-43 Oscar that dove into the clouds and vanished. Visibility was collapsing by the second. Oil fires from wrecked aircraft on the ground mixed with the thick island humidity, forming a brutal ceiling of smoke that clung to the treetops like wet asphalt. Below that haze lay a maze of valleys, ridgelines, and hidden anti-aircraft pits, a perfect trap for any pilot who lingered too long. Then Mercer caught sight of it. A friendly P-38, barely 300 yards ahead, tumbling through the fumes with its left wing aflame. The aluminum skin was peeling back in incandescent strips. The pilot, someone from his own squadron, was fighting the controls, trying to keep the burning aircraft level. But the structure was giving way. A moment later, the wing root buckled. That was when Mercer realized the collapsing wing was falling directly into his flight path. For a split second, time seemed to narrow to a single point. The glow of the fire, the spiraling shards of metal, the violent buffet of turbulence rattling through Mercer's cockpit. One wrong move, one hesitation, and he would be shredded by the debris or swallowed by the smoke, unseen by friend or enemy. What he didn't know yet was that this near collision would be only the beginning of the most harrowing 14 minutes of his combat career. A sequence of decisions and maneuvers that would test not just his flying skill, but his ability to keep calm while the sky itself tried to kill him. The moment Mercer cleared the shearing arc of the collapsing wing, he shoved the throttle forward and climbed hard into the murk, his P-38 shuddering as smoke hammered against the canopy. The burning lightning spiraled below him, vanishing into the treetops with a muffled blast he felt more than heard. He couldn't even see the ground, only a trembling orange flash swallowed by gray. He steadied his breathing. Focus. Fly the plane first. But there was a problem. His right engine coughed, just once a sharp metallic hiccup, followed by a spike on the temperature gauge. In the chaos, Mercer had flown dangerously close to the flaming wreck and ingested superheated debris. The Allison engine was still running, but something inside was not happy. He trimmed slightly left, compensating for the faint imbalance. Below the smoke layer, somewhere hidden by the tangled ridges, enemy anti-aircraft crews were still active. Mercer knew their doctrine. Japanese gunners in the Solomons favored low-profile pits carved into slopes, firing by sound as much as by sight. If he descended blindly into their reach, they'd tear him apart. Staying high inside the smoke was no better. Visibility was near zero, and every second he lingered put him at risk of collision with debris or another aircraft. He checked his position. According to the morning briefing, the strike group of Ki-48 bombers had retreated northwest, escorted by Oscars flying loose, flexible formations. The 339th had split to intercept. Mercer's section had chased the rearmost fighters too aggressively, as it turned out, and now he was separated, navigating a sky filled with the ruins of a fight already gone wrong. Then his radio crackled to life. Lightning 6, this is Talon leader. Do you copy? We got bandits regrouping near the ridge, south of you. Multiple contacts climbing. Mercer's eyes snapped to the haze ahead. Bandits climbing meant the enemy had the advantage. The Oscars could pivot sharply, using their lightweight frames to climb like wasps. A lone P-38, wide-winged, heavy and already dealing with one stressed engine, was exactly the kind of prey they wanted. He leveled his aircraft, sliding under the smoke bank, skimming so low that jungle trees whipped past less than 150 feet below. This was dangerous, but it offered cover. The thicker air and uneven heat rising from the canopy created turbulence that disrupted enemy firing solutions. He swept left toward a narrow valley. But what he didn't know yet was that two Oscars were already diving toward him, using the sunlit edge of the smoke cloud as concealment. As he approached a break in the ridgeline, Mercer throttled back slightly, intending to climb through the gap and regain altitude. That was when a glint flashed above him. Two pinpoints of reflected sunlight. Fighters. The first Oscar dropped fast, its 12.7 millimeters gun sparking to life. Tracers slashed past Mercer's canopy. He rolled right, snapping the P-38 behind a curtain of rising smoke. The enemy overshot, too quick to track him through the turbulence. But the second Oscar was smarter. It curved wide, anticipating Mercer's escape route, preparing a high-angle diving pass that would put its nose guns directly on Mercer's cockpit. Mercer saw it turning into position. He had 3 seconds, maybe less. He pushed the yoke down, diving toward the treetops. Branches blurred. Airspeed climbed past 310 miles per hour. The Oscar followed tighter and faster. But the Japanese pilot didn't know what Mercer had noticed. Directly ahead, less than half a mile away, smoke was feeding into a narrow canyon where the heat columns twisted the air into violent, unpredictable currents. Mercer hit the canyon mouth at over 320 miles per hour, the P-38 rattling so violently that the canopy bolts groaned under the stress. The air inside the narrow pass churned like a living thing. Hot updrafts from burning fuel dumps below slammed against cooler downdrafts rolling over the ridge. For a pilot, it was chaos. For a pursuer, it was a trap. The Oscar dove after him, committed to the kill. But the Japanese fighter's lightweight frame reacted sharply to every jolt of distorted air. Its wings flexed, wobbling as the pilot tried to stabilize the gun sight. Mercer felt the first ripples of turbulence, then the full punch. His lightning lurched up, then right, then dropped almost 20 feet in an instant. He rode out, gritting his teeth. Behind him, the Oscar bucked violently. The Japanese pilot tried to break off, but it was too late. An updraft caught the fighter and slammed it sideways into the canyon wall. Mercer saw only a quick burst of flame and an explosion of debris flung into the smoke-choked sky. He didn't celebrate. There was no time, because there was a problem. His right engine temperature spiked again, redline. The earlier ingestion of burning debris had scarred the coolant system. If the engine overheated completely, it could seize, or worse, catch fire. A single-engine P-38 could fly, but not well, especially not through twisted canyons with enemy fighters nearby. Mercer eased back on the throttle for the right engine, letting it settle. The asymmetry tugged the aircraft to the right, forcing him to counter with constant pressure on the yoke. The Lightning was flyable, barely. A sharp beep cut through his headset. Radar? No, wrong era. It was the IFF transponder, reacting to a coded ping from friendly forces. Somewhere above the smoke layer, a U.S. Navy radar picket destroyer was scanning the area, tracking both friendlies and hostiles. That meant the sky above the smoke wasn't empty. Lightning 6, Talon leader. 2 more bandits maneuvering north of your canyon. They're hunting low. Mercer swore under his breath. The Japanese pilots were adapting quickly. They must have seen the wreck of the first Oscar and shifted tactics, staying high, using the smoke as a ceiling, waiting for Mercer to emerge. He needed altitude, but his wounded engine couldn't handle a long climb. He scanned the terrain ahead. The canyon twisted and rose, offering brief windows where a pilot could punch upward without exposing himself for long. It was risky, but staying low meant being predictable. Predictable meant dead. He banked left into a narrowing corridor, the walls climbing in jagged steps. The turbulence eased slightly, enough for him to feel the Lightning responding cleanly again. He increased throttle on the left engine, nudging the aircraft upward, trading speed for altitude inch by inch. 200 feet, 300, 400. The smoke layer still hung above him like a dirty ceiling, but he was getting close. Then Mercer saw a shape emerge from the haze. An Oscar, nose pointed down, perfectly positioned for an ambush. Its pilot had anticipated the climb, waiting like a hawk. The first burst of tracers sliced past Mercer's left wingtip. He snapped the P-38 right, but the wounded engine struggled to keep balance. The aircraft skidded, dropping altitude, dangerously close to the canyon wall. Mercer kicked the left rudder, forcing the nose around. The Oscar stuck to him like a shadow. It rolled into a tight spiral, trying to get above him again for a diving shot. Mercer recognized the tactic. A high yo-yo classic Japanese dogfighting doctrine. The Oscar would climb, bleed speed, and then drop onto his tail with guns blazing, unless he denied the enemy the space to climb. Mercer shoved the Lightning forward into a dive, straight toward a fork in the canyon where the left passage narrowed to barely twice the P-38's wingspan. It was insane. It was almost suicidal. But it was the only move that would keep the Oscar from using the vertical advantage. As he descended, branches whipped by in streaks of green and brown. Airspeed surged again. The canyon tightened like a vice. Behind him, the Oscar committed to the chase. What neither pilot realized yet was that this incredibly tight corridor funneled directly toward an old Japanese forward supply point, one that had erupted in flames earlier in the morning, and Mercer was about to burst through the center of it at full throttle. The walls of the canyon fell away without warning, opening into a scorched basin littered with the remains of a Japanese forward supply post. What had once been camouflage huts, fuel drums, and ammunition stacks was now a landscape of shattered palms and burning metal. Smoke geysered upward from multiple impact points, feeding the same massive plume Mercer had flown through earlier. He tore into the clearing at nearly 340 miles per hour. The sudden openness disoriented him. After minutes of threading through stone corridors, the sky felt unbearably wide. Flames flickered across the ground like serpents. Half-exploded fuel drums popped in the heat, sending fireballs rolling across the clearing. His left wing skimmed a rising column of smoke. The lightning lurched, buffeted sideways. But the Oscar diving behind him handled. The Japanese fighter dropped out of the canyon mouth with surgical precision, guns already flashing. Tracers zipped past Mercer's canopy, one punching a hole clean through his right boom. He felt the shudder, but the structure held. He broke right, then immediately regretted it. A burning ammunition crate detonated ahead of him, the shockwave hammering the P-38 like a fist. His right engine temperature redlined again, and this time the needle stuck there. He heard a strange grinding from a cowling, metal scraping metal. Still, he held the turn. The Oscar pilot, experienced and unshaken, set up another pass. He pulled into a climbing arc, using the firelit smoke as cover. When he emerged again, he would be directly above Mercer with a perfect line on the cockpit. Mercer needed to think, not react. He scanned the burning supply point, looking for anything that could tilt the fight. Then he saw it. Along the north edge of the clearing, a row of tall palm trees leaned over a natural depression. Below that, hidden by smoke, was a dry stream bed, a narrow, winding trench wide enough for a P-38, but far too unpredictable for an Oscar to follow a high speed. If he could drop into that trench, he could break the enemy's angle, maybe even force an overshoot. But there was a problem. To reach the trench, he'd need to cut across the open clearing, directly through the kill zone where the Oscar would fire on him from above. Mercer steadied the yoke. Commit and survive, or hesitate and die. He shoved the throttles forward, left engine roaring, right engine coughing and rattling in protest. The lightning lunged across the clearing. Above him, the Oscar dove in. Tracers poured around the P-38 like streaks of molten light. A round shattered part of his left nacelle. Another punched through the trailing edge of the wing. Mercer held the line, teeth clenched, waiting, counting. 3 seconds, 2-1. He yanked the yoke back, then immediately rolled left and dropped the nose. The lightning snapped downward, plunging into the hidden stream bed. Tall palms whipped overhead, their fronds brushing his canopy. The Oscar dove past, barely missing him, too fast to follow into the trench. Its pilot tried to correct, pulling into a wide turn above the clearing to set up another pass. Mercer raced through the trench, the path twisting like a serpent. The walls were only feet away. His right engine began to sputter, rhythmic now worsening. He needed to end the fight before the engine failed completely. Up ahead, sunlight spilled through an opening where the stream bed met a gentle slope leading to open sky. It was the only exit, and the enemy would be waiting. Mercer burst upward into the light. The Oscar was already diving in, but this time, Mercer had a single fleeting advantage. The enemy had overcommit, diving steeply and fast, expecting Mercer to stay low just a moment longer. The Oscar shot past, slightly ahead, slightly below. For the first and only time, Mercer had position. He rolled the lightning inverted, pulled into a tight, descending spiral, and dropped the gun sight onto the Oscar's canopy. At this angle, at this speed, he had maybe half a second before he overshot. He squeezed the trigger. The P-38's 4.50 calories and 20 millimeters cannon erupted at once, a unified blast that tore into the Oscar's fuselage. The Japanese fighter shuddered, wobbled, and then exploded into a burst of flame that vanished into the treetops. Mercer pulled up hard, the G-forces crushing him into the seat. He had won the duel, but the fight wasn't over, because now, flying on a failing engine, low on fuel and deep behind smoke-covered terrain, Mercer had to find a way out, while an entire Japanese strike force regrouped somewhere beyond the ridgeline. And time was running out. Mercer leveled out at barely 300 feet, the lightning shuddering as the wounded right engine wheezed like a dying animal. The temperature gauge had stopped climbing only because it had reached the edge of its limits. Any further damage, and the engine could seize without warning. Fuel was another threat. He'd spent too long low, too long at high power, burning through reserves he didn't have. He needed altitude to get home, yet altitude meant exposure. He skimmed above the treetops toward the northern ridgeline, weaving between rising pillars of smoke. His thoughts ran faster than the aircraft. Find clearer air. Climb just enough to clear the ridge. Don't stall. Don't lose the left engine. Don't die in a place no one will ever find you. Behind him, the sky glowed with the dying fire of the shattered supply point. In front of him, the ridge loomed, a dark wall of jungle that felt impossibly high. He pulled gently on the yoke, nursing every ounce of lift from the Lightning's broad wings. The left engine strained. The right engine coughed again. A hollow metallic rattled deep in the housing. Airspeed bled away. 200 feet from the ridge crest, Mercer realized he wasn't going to make it with the current climb rate. And then came a sound he dreaded. Clunk. A deep, final mechanical slam inside the failing engine. His right propeller froze. The sudden drag yanked the Lightning violently to the right. Mercer wrestled the yoke with both hands, boots slamming on the rudder pedals. The aircraft skidded, nose dropping, straight toward the canopy below. He shoved the nose down deliberately, converting a near stall into a shallow dive. The Lightning responded sluggishly, but stayed controllable. Banking left, he followed the contour of the hillside, praying for a lower gap, an opening in the ridge, anything that could get him through alive. There, just ahead, was a shallow notch between two rises, narrow and even, but lower than the rest. It was his only shot, but there was a problem. A formation of Japanese Ki-48 bombers, 3 of them, was emerging through the smoke beyond the ridge, limping home from the earlier engagement. And they weren't alone. A single Oscar, likely the last escort, flew above them, scanning for threats. Mercer tightened his grip on the controls. If they spot me with the dead engine, I'm finished. He angled his approach to slip below the notch while remaining hidden under the ridge's shadow. His airspeed hovered dangerously close to stall speed. Too slow and the Lightning would drop. Too fast, and he would overshoot the gap and reveal himself. The Oscar banked lazily above the bombers, its pilot unaware that a crippled P-38 was threading the ridge beneath him. Mercer cleared the notch with barely 20 feet to spare. The moment he crossed through, the world opened into bright, cleaner air. The smoke thinned. The coastline, blue, broken, familiar, spread out ahead of him in the distance. He was almost out, but the Oscar finally saw him. It rolled hard into a dive, committing fast. Mercer scanned for cover. There was none. His only defense was what remained of his airspeed and the P-38's dive characteristics. He shoved the nose down again. The Lightning dropped toward a wide lagoon, the sunlight reflecting so brightly off the water that it stung Mercer's eyes. The Oscar closed in too fast, too confident. Mercer held steady, letting the enemy draw closer. At the last second, just 50 feet above the water, he hauled back on the yoke. The P-38's left engine screamed, dragging the airframe upward in a brutal, shallow arc. The Oscar tried to match the pull-up, but it didn't have the energy. It punched into the lagoon in a violent spray of water and debris. Mercer didn't watch it sink. He didn't have the strength to care. He climbed only enough to clear the tree line, then steadied the Lightning in a trembling glide. Henderson Field lay just a few miles ahead, a strip of pale and carved out of jungle and war. "Lightning 6, we see you," came a calm voice over the radio. "You're trailing smoke. Emergency crew is standing by." Mercer managed a reply, voice hoarse, copy coming in one engine. The final minutes were a blur, dropping the gear manually, compensating for the asymmetric drag, feeling the aircraft sag on the approach. The P-38 hit the runway hard, bounced once, and slammed down again, skidding as the right landing gear collapsed. The Lightning slid to a stop in a cloud of dust. Ground crew sprinted toward him. Mercer exhaled for the first time in what felt like an hour. His hands trembled as he shut down the remaining engine and leaned back in the seat. He had survived the collapsing wing, the canyon, the burning supply point, 2 Oscars, and a dead engine, and somehow made it home. But the price, he knew, would stay with him long after the canopy opened. When the ground crew finally pried open the canopy, First Lieutenant Evan Mercer was pale, drenched in sweat, and shaking from adrenaline, but alive. The mechanics who examined his P-38 later said they had never seen an aircraft return with that level of structural damage, still able to fly. One engine seized solid, the remaining nacelle punctured in 3 places, and holes scattered across both wings like a map of near death. The squadron's after-action reports documented the duel, the canyon chase, and the final escape over the lagoon, noting that Mercer's survival hinged on instinct sharpened by weeks of brutal island combat. His actions prevented Japanese fighters from regrouping over friendly lines and disrupted the retreat of the damaged bomber group, an outcome that played a small but meaningful role in weakening enemy air presence over the Solomons during that crucial period of the campaign. For Mercer himself, the legacy was quieter. He flew again far sooner than doctors recommended, and completed his tour with a reputation for calm under pressure that bordered on unnerving. After the war, he rarely spoke of the 14-minute ordeal that nearly killed him, and when he did, he dismissed it with a pilot's modest shrug. Just did what I had to do. Today, the incident survives mostly in squadron diaries, a few faded photographs of the battered Lightning, and the memories of the men who watched him drag a half-dead aircraft back onto Henderson Field. Yet among pilots who study World War II dogfights, Mercer's escape remains a whispered classic, an example of how skill, terrain reading, and sheer willpower could push an airframe far beyond its breaking point. If this story moved you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether anyone in your family ever served in the Air Forces. And if you want more long cinematic war stories like this one, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.